It's been a minute. It's been like 6 months. Probably got some explaining to do. But you're here to see a deck profile probably, more than anything. So let's do that first, and then we'll talk more about like the personal stuff. So after a long time, DI finally has support in G, besides just kind of awkward Amon support. The deck really only has kind of one choice in builds, so sadly there isn't like a budget version of this, which is why this video has taken so long to come out. I wanted it to feel as competitive as I could while still playing within my strengths as a player. With that said, there are kind of a few ways of building this like competitive version of Scharhrot. The way that I'm seeing probably be the more successful build is one that I've seen people on Twitter such as Hong Wai using. I think Different Fights video is also very similar to this build. This build does use units that retire, such as Gwyn the Ripper. I think that's technically the only generic retire that DI has. Hong Wai's list is also using the stand trigger cap. I think he's playing this because it shuffles back into the deck, which means you have more cards to help you from decking out. It's also 2 less draws to play. He's also playing the grade 1 that helps with the excess soul charging that goes beyond 13. Now, the build I'm using is a little bit different than that. The way I'm building the deck is I'm trying to get to 14 soul. Now, before I start talking about the deck, I want you to kind of envision more of a tempo build. I know Vanguard is basically all just aggro, but this is the Vanguard version of tempo. Our turns 1 through 3 or even 4 is purely just to soul charge and draw cards. This is what I mean by tempo. We're just kind of playing our own game. We're not really caring what the opponent is doing. Unless our PGs somehow end up in the damage, we will have access to all of them throughout the game from the amount that we are either putting them into soul or that we are drawing them. In my opinion, as someone who has just kind of accepted DI as my main, you win with DI by playing it like it's DI. Not like any other clan, not like any other strategy. You kind of have to do what DI does. And DI soul charges. That just comes with the territory. I think most people who are going to start piloting this deck, any version of it, is just going to be so scared of this decking out. I've been playing DI for so many years, and within Zero, you have a smaller deck list. You have to play more weird trigger lineups of mostly draws. Deck outs are a bigger thing in Zero. I don't really put that much thought into decking out anymore. The more I've played this build, the more I have seen that really the only time I deck out is when I'm not paying attention, when I'm not looking in that bottom left corner to see the size of the deck. That's usually when I lose. I'm losing other ways just from other misplaying, but deck out is not usually something I'm typically losing from anymore. See, if you've ever played other card games such as Magic and stuff, people always talk about stuff like life is a resource. You can win a game of Vanguard with 5 damage, right? Technically, we as Vanguard players want to have a lot of damage so that we have more counterblast to use. We have cards in the game to give us damage to make it so we can play our cards. So why as a DI player would I be scared to be getting more soul if that's what the deck wants to have? I can win the game with 1 or 2 cards left in the deck. Earlier I mentioned that 14 soul is our goal, not 13. This is because our starter, Enigmatic Assassin, which if you've played Premium, you already know what he does. In the soul, darkness, which means you have had to at one point have soul charged a card. This is important. When a unit attacks any unit, you can then call it out. If you have 10 or more, it gets plus 5k. If you have 13 or more, it gets plus 10k additionally. So when it is called out, if you have 13 cards in your soul, it is a 20k attacker and or booster. The assassin checks how many cards are in your soul when it's placed. That means if you had 13 in your soul, place it, it will only get the plus 5k. So you have to be at 14 or more, then call it, then it checks, seeing that you are now at 13 or more. Now, the reason I play that as our starter versus other people playing the bat is because in combination with the grade 4 Scharhrot, now you'll notice I only have one of the grade 4 Scharhrots. This is because its GB2 just requires a G zone flip. It doesn't have to be its own name. So the more you have of him, the better, but you can get by with just a one of him. He says, when he attacks, counterblast 1, put all of your front row rear guards into your soul, and this you again, it's plus 10k until the end of the battle. If your soul has 10 or more, which it will, all your opponent's rear guards are then retired. So this is a way to get past their front row rear guards if you had already attacked a rear guard. So technically this can only retire one front row rear guard. With combination with an enigmatic assassin, you can do a different play. First, let me finish his ability. If you are at GB2 Darkness, when it attacks, if you have 13 or more, it then gets guard restrict of discarding a grade 3. This in combination with our starter is a 5 attack finishing turn. You go rear guard into interceptor, rear guard into interceptor, calling out assassin on top of one of the units. It is now at 20k. It then swings at Vanguard. They PG, they heal guard, whatever. You then swing with Scharhrot, tucks your front row into the soul. They guard restrict, hopefully, with the PG, going down less cards in the hand. You can then call out assassin again because it saw that a unit attacked, calls itself back out. Still at 20k because you just soul charged. You are still hitting that requirement. Swings again. 5 attack turn, and that's with 2 interceptors. Like I said, we are a tempo deck. We don't really care what the opponent is doing. I do not care about retiring. I care about every unit in the deck either soul charging or protecting me so that when I go for these final turn pushes, I can actually execute that plan without having to worry. Obviously, the kind of key card of the deck is the grade 3 Scharhrot. It has Windstrode, Soul Charge 2. This makes it so Darkness is going to almost always be active. Your Vanguard then gets the following ability. At the end of the battle it attacked, if your soul is 6 or more, retire one of your opponent's rear guards at random, priority in the back row. On a side note, this will never really be good, primarily because everybody is playing the grade 0s with resist. This means that it doesn't make it so it can't target it. The randomness can still hit it. I've had turns where Scharhrot and the grade 4 that retires, at the end of the combat, both of them will go to retire something. They will have 3 units in the back row, and both of the retires hit the starter. So it was just 2 giant whiffs. It's still nice to have, but typically you're doing it for the shuffle 2 cards at random back into the deck. This is a way to put randomly a heal guard back in the deck. It probably won't be. It'll probably just be a random grade 2 that's been retired as an interceptor, but it's still ways of keeping the deck from decking out while it is still soul charging. So this is what I mean. We are progressing the game plan of soul charging and not really caring what's happening in the deck. We can continue to not care because we play 4 Chariots of the Witching Hour. You know what this does. Everyone's played Grudgy. It just gives us ways of not decking out. It also gives us access to Demon Bike. I really like Demon Bike in this deck because it is a card you can call, add a card to the deck, and then just retire it, and then get your PG out of your soul. I love it. Our last grade 3 is, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I just know he is a unit with darkness, and that when he is placed on rearguard, you can counterblast 1 and have the possibility with this deck, since every card in the deck is darkness, to soul charge 5 cards. I lied. Technically our Chariot is not a darkness, so typically if I'm going to be using his effect or the grade 2 that checks for darkness, Demonic Executioner, I will use their abilities and then call the Chariots just to not muddle. While I'm on Demonic Executioner, his big reason for the deck is when placed, look at the top 7, soul charge a card with darkness. This is great because typically I will even put the PGs in soul, just so then it's almost like a drawn a PG, like filtered a PG out of my hand. I've heard people talk badly about his first ability, which is the Counterblast 1 get plus 2k. I use it for the small case scenarios of when the opponent did not lay 2 interceptors. An 11k swing doesn't need a booster. We never lay boosters. We are typically only calling stuff to the front row. We're discarding our grade 1s as stride fodder. So having a grade 2 that can swing at Vanguard without a booster is great. His ability, when you first read it, it thinks that you have to place something in the same column as him. This also counts as riding. So he is our ride 2 target. It does have this whole thing of that he can be a booster. Typically this never really comes in handy the way I play the deck. Sometimes it's nice on a enigmatic assassin turn as like a final push, just as so that it has a booster and you didn't lose it, but I typically don't really care. I also kind of glazed over that Were Tiger Jaeger also is stride fodder for the deck. So it with the Succubus of Pure Love, we are playing 8 stride fodder. I'm mainly playing Succubus so that I am always going to be riding Scharhrot. I never don't want to be riding Scharhrot. And then if I place it, I can then just retire it for getting the PG later. So I think it's a win-win. So this is the part of the video where I talk about where I think I've maybe didn't build the deck as strongly as maybe others. I'm only playing one Edge in the Darkness. This is the grade 1 that can have intercept in the back row, and it's also a 10k booster, which is nice in the late game. It is great against opponents who are not paying attention. I've played against Kagero and Narukami players who will retire my front row, not paying attention to the back row, go to combat, and then notice that they aren't going to be able to finish me this turn. Same with Aquaforce, I've noticed that. They'll do like the wave combos and notice that they don't have a swing at the Vanguard because of him in the back. I think a lot of people play it in a higher count because they think they're going to be using the grade 4 Scharhrot more, so that they'll still have intercepts after the Scharhrot turn. I'm only doing Scharhrot when I know I'm going to win, so this is just an additional grade 1 to have. And the deck already has so much defensive plays with how much I'm drawing and selective soul charging and getting the PG out of my soul. So I've noticed that I've never really needed it, but I don't think it's bad. I think if you want to cut a couple Stride Father, either of the Succubus or Warrior Tiger, and up it, I wouldn't be super opposed, but I like the current ratios I have. The one card I'm not very happy with was the grade 2 Succubus. It is a card with Darkness. It is a card that soul charges, and it is a card that counter charges, so it's like free soul charge. What I hate about it is it has this caveat where if you have 10 or more cards in your soul, you get to draw 2 and discard a card. You might read that as that's great, but if you've played DI, you know it's not great because you already have such a fat hand at all times that you're probably going to end up discarding both the cards you drew anyway, and you're eating up more of the deck that's already kind of like a tight resource for us. So I almost wish that this card didn't have the draw effect, or I guess I still want it to have the draw effect. I just wish it was the filter effect instead of a draw 2. So I would understand cutting this down for Gwyn, but then you then run into the problem of then you're playing less Darkness cards. So I don't really know how that feels, but I see people doing it and it works out for them. So that's probably where I would make the most adjustment. Flying Librarian, GB1, that's very important. You can't do this early game. When plays Counterblast 1, Soul Charge 2. If you have 6 or more, draw a card, 10 or more, counter charge 1, so it's a free soul charge and draw, same as the Succubus. I hate it. It's an 8k. Like I said, I hardly ever call boosters, so then this forces me to call a booster and leave it out, which I can't then easily retire for the PG. But it's still a good soul charge. It's a good way to get cards in hand. I like it as a one-off. Now, typically our first stride is going to be the Kiss Kill Lyra. This is because it soul charges very easily and it draws us cards, and you technically can draw more cards with it. I think it's a great ride 1. That's because Scharhrot is just going to be retiring stuff in the back row for us. If you already have a fat hand, going into the Mask of Demonic Frenzy is just going to make another possibly free retire. It's going to soul charge the same amount, it's just doesn't add to hand. Now this is why the deck is not going to be free to play friendly anytime soon, and that's because Giles DeVries, I don't know how to pronounce his name, is so important in the deck. It is the second stride every time. This is because typically you are either using it to get the opponent to 5. I should probably read his ability first, sorry. When he attacks Persona Blast, which means you have to play playsets of him, he gets a critical, and then the more cards you have in the soul, the better he gets. If you have 10 or more, he gets plus 10k. If you are at that Magic 13, your opponent then has to do a guard restrict. He can be a finisher, but I mainly use him as pressure. This is so then we can either finish them with a Scharhrot 5 attack push, or I'm eating up the PGs in their hand so that then on the next turn I have more to pressure them with. This can either then be another Abominable one, which is why you kind of need 4 of him, or if I've noticed that I've decked down myself so much, Charlotte's first ability of being at plus 10k, and if you are at 10 or more cards in soul, he gets a crit. This is great because if you notice, it's not a Darkness ability. This just means at all times, Scharhrot late game is a 2 crit swing. So this is a way to have a finishing turn without having to soul charge and deck us out even more. Again, the tempo of the deck is very important, so I'm gonna go over again the kind of 1 by 1 of the turn order. Turn 1, you're gonna try to ride somebody like Were Tiger. It's not a big deal who turn 1 is, none of them are gonna be soul charging for us. Turn 2, you want Tragic Claw. This is just so you can have a free soul charge. None of our units work on Vanguard as a soul charge. You are then going to try to get to Scharhrot Vampire. If you don't have them in your hand, you're going to try to use Succubus of Love to try to discard any card out of your hand to then get to Scharhrot. Your first stride is either going to be Kiss Kill or Mask of Demonic Frenzy. Mask if you have a full hand, Kiss Kill if you have a low hand count. Then after that, you are going to go into Abdominal 1. get a really good push and either go into Abominable 1 again or the one steeped in sin Scharhrot. Now I'm going to turn off the recording of this because I've been recording for almost 30 minutes and my phone is burning. Yeah, sorry again that this took so long to come out. I was going to come out with it as soon as I had finished the deck and I knew it was working, but I wanted to prove to myself that I could play Vanguard 0 again. I imagine you can probably guess that I haven't been playing as much. I have been turning it on every day, been doing my dailies, doing all the events, having fun with the game in my own way, but I'm not playing competitive anymore. I just couldn't afford it. The game is not free-to-play friendly anymore. It is sad how that's worked. I will say I haven't spent a dime on the game since I've took a break from taking videos. That's 6 months of not spending any gems. No, that's a lie. I opened the Night Rose packs, but I'd saved up about like 5,000 gems, so that's enough for 50 packs. I'd also had so much DI material because, nothing was coming out for DI, that I was able to craft every triple rare and below. I've never made a GR in the game, so I was able to make 2 of the 4 abdominal ones. Luckily, like I said, one steeped in sin Scharhrot as a 1-of works, so I was able to make the deck completely free to play for myself. But I can't imagine if you were trying to play like Kagro. Kagro I love, and there's new stuff coming out for it all the time. I can't keep up. So this was like my one chance in a while to actually play competitive, and I wanted to try to get as far as I could. As you saw in the deck list, I have one of the rank rewards, the alternate art, Charlotte art. And I was like, okay, that was so easy because, the double rank thing was going on. So I was like, okay, I should try to get a foil one. That would be like a cool little stamp to show on the video. Like, look, I got the foil Charlotte. And I played, and I got to I forget what it was. It was 2,900 something. I got into the 3,000 pocket to where I would get at least one foil, and I was happy with that. I was like, cool. Gonna go to bed now. And I woke up and I got out of it. I was like 3,000. I forget what it was. It was like a low 3,000 number. I was just so disappointed in myself because I didn't push. I didn't stay within that pocket. But then I thought about it. I was like, that's the whole reason I stopped playing. I felt this stress to constantly try to be better than I was. I'm not a competitive person when it comes to card games. I like playing for fun. I like playing casually with my friends. And there isn't really a way to do that in Vanguard 0 anymore. With that said, I had a lot of fun playing Charlotte, surprisingly. I was playing 3 or 4 games a day, and I was enjoying it again, and it was fun to learn this new strategy of DI and see all the new decks that I haven't seen in since I stopped kind of playing, and seeing how I would stack up to it. And it was cool to see. Yeah, obviously there's other reasons I kind of stepped away from making videos for a minute. Mental health, physically, my knees have just been shot. Triple Rare was great. Come out with some cool stuff if you want to check it out and support me. I'd really appreciate it. I don't want to make this whole ad read. But yeah, I think this video is pretty long enough. I'm going to keep trying to possibly make more Vanguard content, and no promises. I guarantee you when that new Switch Steam game comes out, Days, what's it called? Whenever that comes out, I'm going to definitely be making content on that because that looks so fucking fun. It's going to be in English. So stoked on that. I want to keep doing stuff with the channel. I have this drive to make content again, but like I said, Vanguard 0 is just not that fun right now. It's hard to make content for a game I can't tell other people to play, is what I mean by that. I can't tell a new friend of mine to oh, do you want to start playing a card game? Just play Vanguard 0. It's only $80 a month probably to play. It's just not worth it. I don't know. If you guys are down, there's going to be possibly other content on here, hopefully. Yeah, as you can tell, I haven't done this in a while, so I never really know how to end these. Never will. That's all I got. Thanks.